G20। अब G20 समिट वाज हेल्ड रिसेंटली, है ना, जिसे डिस्टर्बेंस बोल रहा है वो G20 समिट था। Last week we uploaded some recorded videos, right? We did not take class because the classes had to be closed because of G20 Summit. G20 Summit was there on last Saturday. This G20 Summit is, or this G20 Summit was very successful, but at a time when no one was expecting it. No one was expecting it to be successful because at global level there were huge tensions going on. जैसे अपन ने न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन रिलीज किया G20 समिट में, which was a consensus document. Consensus document means all the 20 members of the G20 agreed to it, bringing those 20 countries on agreement on something, where we have China and US, Europe, we have Russia एक तरफ, और वो यूक्रेन में लड़ रहे हैं। नाटो उन्हें वेपन सप्लाई कर रहा है, यूएस उन्हें वेपन सप्लाई कर रहा है यूक्रेन को, वो रशिया से लड़ रहे हैं। वहां पे कमिंग अप विद अ कंसेंसस डॉक्यूमेंट was something that no one was expecting. In fact, when you will read articles by Indian IR experts, इंडिया के इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन एक्सपर्ट्स के डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़ोगे, आर्टिकल्स पढ़ोगे of 5th of September, 6th September, 7th September, they were saying कि though we may not be able to come up with a declaration, a consensus declaration, और उस सिचुएशन में we have been able to do that. It shows India's growing influence. It shows India's diplomatic abilities, and it also shows that India is a country which has listeners on both the sides. Russia में भी, Russia के diplomats भी are someone whom India can influence, and Western countries के diplomats भी are someone whom India can influence. And thus, this is one of the biggest international relation or foreign relation achievements of India in the recent years. One of the biggest. जब पूरा वर्ल्ड assume कर रहा है, इंडिया के खुद जो आर्टिकल्स लिखते हैं लोग, IR experts, they were assuming कि हाँ, it would not be successful. We have made it successful. So New Delhi Declaration is one aspect. There are several other outcomes of G20 Summit. But before we go there, let us start with the beginning. What is G20? What are its purpose? Why G20 is significant for India? Before we go to what happened in the G20 Summit. Okay, सबसे पहले, let us understand what G20 is. So if you go back to 1990s, आप 97 में जाइए, आप में से बहुत सारे लोग पैदा भी नहीं हुए। 97 में ईस्ट एशिया में, there is some doubt online also. Sir, can we write a statement like this? One nation, one vote is politically motivated because the real issues the union minister and national leaders are involved in campaign of state election. नहीं, अवॉइड करो, है ना, मतलब इसको अवॉइड करो थोड़ा सा. डू नॉट ब्रिंग इन पॉलिटिशियंस या सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट वाले गड़बड़ कर रहे हैं या स्टेट वाले गड़बड़ कर रहे हैं, वो सब चीजें मत लेके आओ. वो आंसर में ना, you should not show this ki you have some political bend there. Avoid it. Now come back to what were we talking about? G20. If we go back to 1997, East Asia economy में crisis आया. तो फटाफट a lot of investment there was in the form of foreign institutional FPI, foreign portfolio investment. वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज ने अपना बहुत सारा पैसा निकाला, उससे और टंबल हुआ मार्केट. तो टू प्रिवेंट दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग फ्रॉम हैपनिंग, एक इनफॉर्मल ग्रुपिंग बना G20. इनफैक्ट G20 वाज फॉर्म्ड इन 1999 उससे पहले वो G23 जितने मेंबर्स जितनी कंट्रीज आके मिलते थे, जितनी बड़ी इकोनॉमीज आके मिलती थी, वो नाम दे देते थे। कभी G23 नाम था, कुछ और नाम था। G20 was formally formed in 1999 and this G20 was basically a informal meeting of finance ministers and central banks of these countries. इसमें ये समिट भी नहीं हुआ करता था। समिट देखो, समिट का मतलब क्या होता है? SUMMIT, समिट मतलब होता है पीक। समिट में यू विल हैव हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट पार्टिसिपेट। तो अभी जो G20 हुआ, दैट वाज G20 समिट। तो एट दैट टाइम इट वाज नॉट इवन अ summit level talk. In 1999 when G20 was started, it started as informal meetings of finance ministers as well as the central banks of those countries. Purpose क्या था? Ensuring कि थोड़ा economic stability बना। The East Asian crisis that had come, those kind of situation should not occur. So the group of 20 or G20 is an international forum of the government, finance ministers and central bank governors from 20 major economies. Now please note it carefully. यहाँ पे हम बोल रहे हैं it is an international forum, जहाँ पे हम गवर्नमेंट्स को भी डाल रहे हैं सब चीजों पे। बट if we go to 1999, it was an informal forum of finance ministers and central bank governors of its members to meet annually with the aim of studying, reviewing and promoting high-level discussion of policy issue pertaining to the promotion of international financial stability. So कैसे, what was the purpose for which G20 was formed? Ensuring international financial stability. Background क्या है? East Asian financial crisis. Do we have clarity here? इस साल प्री में आया था ये सवाल। इससे पहले भी 2019 प्री में क्वेश्चन आया था, which of the following is not a G20 country? So they have regularly asked questions related to G20. Mains में भी they can ask questions related to G20. जैसे इस साल most probably there will be GS2 paper today only. Second half में GS2 paper है, उसमें IR में they may ask a question on G20, though it would not be about the summit because summit is happening only 6-7 days before the paper, but overall the significance of G20 पे सवाल हो सकता है। I'm not saying होगा ही, और हो जाए तो ये मत बोलना सर आपको तो पेपर पहले से पता था, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, but there can be some questions. Okay, now so how it started, did we understand? Now देखो, अब ये G20 होने के बाद भी what happened? 2008 financial crisis, 2008 में भी Lehman Brothers collapsed, making world economy go into recession. So what we noted was, in spite of G20 being there, the financial stability, international financial stability वाला target was not ensured. और जो ईस्ट एशिया क्राइसिस 1990s का था, उससे भी बड़ा क्राइसिस। In fact, the 2008 recession was the biggest ever recession since the Great Depression of 1920s, late 1920s, 1929, 30, 31, 32 जब वो ग्रेट डिप्रेशन आया था, उसके बाद का सबसे बड़ा इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस वाज something that happened in 2008. Then what happened? The agenda of G20 was expanded by the inclusion of head of government in the meeting. And since then, यहाँ पे summits होने लगे। Summits मतलब meeting of the top leadership. It replaced the G8 as the main economic council of the wealthy nation. Till this time, there was a G8 grouping, जहाँ पे most of the biggest economic decisions were taken because their head of the governments used to go. But even up now, even in G20, we get what? Head of the governments. And not only of those 8 countries. अब वो G8, G7 हो गया क्योंकि Russia has been thrown out. But not only of those 8 countries or now those 7 countries, but of 19 major economies plus European Union. Are we understanding this? Summit होना कब से शुरू हुआ? Since when has it been called summit? So please note that G20 is still an informal grouping, so it does not have a secretariat. आप पूछोगे where is G20 headquartered? It's an informal grouping where every year some country would get presidency, and then that country is supposed to hold the summit and conduct various discussion meetings and set the agenda for that year's G20. फाइन, ये कुछ बेसिक प्रीलिम्स के रिलेटेड चीजें आपको पता होनी चाहिए कि हाउ व्हेन डिड G20 स्टार्ट, व्हाट वाज द पर्पस, व्हेन द मीटिंग स्टार्टेड हैपनिंग एट द समिट लेवल, 2008 क्राइसिस, उसके बाद समिट लेवल मीटिंग होना शुरू हुआ, बट इवन देन, इवन नाउ इट्स अ इनफॉर्मल meeting. It doesn't have a permanent secretariat, it doesn't have any permanent office as such, and then the president every year a country presidency milegi usse, and they would be conducting various activities of G20. They say India became the president of G20 and last year in December. Abhi the presidency would be transferred to Brazil. Brazil ke baad I think it would be going to South Africa. Right? So agle for next few years, it would be developing countries only, global south only, which would be leading G20. Now, members. Prelims में ये सवाल भी आता है कि who are the members of G20. अब देखो members यहाँ mention तो है, but I do not want you to remember it or note it like this. I want you to imagine this on the world map. So rather than cramming G20 members, understand the idea. Idea is world's largest economies. 19 दुनिया के 19 सबसे बड़ी economies plus European Union. These are the members of G20. Okay, when we look at the world map, let us start from this side. So if you would see that in G20, we have all the 3 countries of North America: Canada, US, Mexico. Canada, US, Mexico. Fine, ये clear रहेगा सबको, कभी नहीं भूलना. Then, if we come to South America, you would see the 2 largest countries here. One is Brazil, other is Argentina. These 2 are part of G20. बाकी सब छोटी-छोटी economies है, they are not part of it. 5 countries clear है सबको? Easy to remember, easy to understand. If you come to Europe, so Europe में, if you go to the biggest economies of Europe, so you will see Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Turkey. These are the biggest, among the biggest economies. So United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, and Turkey. Right? सोचो वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 में जो मेजर प्लेयर्स थे, यूके, फ्रांस, जर्मनी, इटली, these were major players, powerful players. And then इस साइड पे Turkey. 5 these. So 5 we had seen on that side: Canada, US, Mexico, Argentina and Brazil, Brazil and Argentina. 5 here: UK, Germany, France, Italy and Turkey. 10 हो गए. Simple. Spain दो एक बड़ा इकोनॉमी है. Spain is a permanent invitee. It's not a member of G20. अभी हम देखें. 10 हो गए. अफ्रीका में there is only one country, South Africa. तो टोटल अमेरिका से 5 कंट्री, यूरोप से 5 कंट्री, 10, अफ्रीका से 1, 11, कितनी बचे? 8. 8 इकोनॉमीज, 8 लार्ज इकोनॉमीज, ऑल फ्रॉम एशिया. रशिया को भी एशिया में मान लेते हैं, ऑल फ्रॉम एशिया. रशिया, चाइना, जापान, साउथ कोरिया, इंडिया, इंडोनेशिया एंड ऑस्ट्रेलिया. ऑस्ट्रेलेशिया बोलना चाहिए था, एशिया नहीं बोलना चाहिए था, ऑस्ट्रेलिया. कुछ मिस हुआ क्या? सऊदी अरब, यस, सऊदी अरेबिया यहाँ पे पहले इधर मिस हो गया, मैं आगे चला गया. सऊदी अरेबिया. 8 कंट्रीज, 11 + 8, 19, एंड देन यूरोपियन यूनियन 20. तो मैप पे if we come to Asia, you'll have Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, and 19 countries of G20. I could have just given you list and read it, but now उसे फिर याद करना हमेशा challenging रहता है. What I want you to do is you should always have this who are the G20 countries. अब उसे G21 बोलेंगे तो African Union would also be part of it. African Union has joined G20 abhi in this summit. So now from next time it will be called G21, not G20. So factual thing first. When did it start? 1999 में, but तब गवर्नमेंट समिट लेवल पे मीट नहीं करती थी. देन फ्रॉम 2008 इट इज मीटिंग एट समिट लेवल. गोल क्या है? ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी. हु आर द मेंबर कंट्रीज? 5 फ्रॉम अमेरिका, 3 फ्रॉम नॉर्थ अमेरिका, कनाडा, यूएस, मेक्सिको, 2 फ्रॉम साउथ अमेरिका, ब्राजील एंड अर्जेंटीना, 5 फ्रॉम यूरोप, यूके, फ्रांस, जर्मनी, इटली, टर्की, 1 फ्रॉम Africa, South Africa, and remaining 8 from Asia, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, and फिर Australia. Remaining 7 from Asia and 1 from Australia. 19 countries. क्या हम सब बता पाएंगे इसे? तो देखो G20 क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आता है सवाल, तो you will be able to, I hope, easily handle it. हम जब बिना सोचे समझे रटने लगते हैं ना, तो कंफ्यूजन हो. जब थोड़ा सा मैप पे सोचेंगे चीजों को, बड़ी बड़ी इकोनॉमीज के बारे में. अब नाइजीरिया इज ऑल्सो एन इंपॉर्टेंट इकोनॉमी, साउथ अफ्रीका से बड़ी इकोनॉमी हो जाती है, बट फिर भी वो उसका पार्ट नहीं है. कोई बात, अपन ने याद ऐसे रखा है कि साउथ अफ्रीका है, अफ्रीका से एक थी. लेट्स नाउ गो टू सम अदर एस्पेक्ट्स. कि 2023 में समिट दिल्ली में हुआ, जहां पे अफ्रीकन यूनियन हैज आल्सो बीन इंक्लूडेड. UN, IMF, World Bank, they also attend the meet. Spain is a permanent guest invitee at the summit. Note it carefully. Europe से 5 countries were members, and Spain, another large economy, is guest invitee. Okay. Sir, MCC has model code of conduct has no constitutional or legal backing. Even if it is violated, one cannot file a case in the court. Then why take it seriously? अरे इलेक्शन कमीशन आपके ऊपर केस फाइल कर सकती है फॉर ऑन वेरियस अदर ग्राउंड. मॉडल कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट बोलता है कि आप रिलीजियस लाइन पे चीजें नहीं करोगे, आप कर रहे हो तो अंडर वेरियस प्रोविजंस ऑफ रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल एक्ट एवरीथिंग ECI कैन डू दैट. ओके, अभी बात करते हैं ग्लोबल साउथ की. रुकिए थोड़ी देर रुकिए. अच्छा, किसी ने बता दीजिए. लेट्स सोशली डेवलप्ड और डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज. Okay, let's come back to G20. So G20, various members, other groupings which attend the meeting, etc. Now, objective 1, major economies should be able to coordinate policy together. 2, promoting financial regulations, and 3, creating a new international financial structure, because the older structure which was created after World War II has become anachronistic. Anachronistic means outdated. World Bank, IMF, they're being dominated by those countries who were superpowers, who were very powerful economically and militarily after World War II. But that's not the situation today. So G20, one of the goals of G20 is also to create a new international financial architecture which would be representing the current scenario rather than the older ones. अगर आप significance देखना चाहते हो G20 का, तो you can it provides a forum of international economic cooperation. It reshapes the governance of global finance. One of the discussions that happens at G20 also play a role at UN. अब देखो UN में भी which are the P5 countries? Most UNSC के 5 permanent members: US, UK, Russia, China, and France. ये 5 कंट्रीज हैं, क्या ये 5 G20 के मेंबर्स भी हैं? है ना? These G20 countries actually without African Union अब आ गया, but even without African Union represented 90% of the gross world product. Of all the production that is happening in the world, 90% happen in these countries. 80% of the trade, 2/3 of the world population, and thus their influence is very high. So when they act, when this in the G20 meeting, they take some decisions. If all the countries of G20 agree to it, there are very high chances that it would get implemented at UN level also. Then discussions and agreement at G20 help in reshaping the governance of global finance. It has enabled work towards reform of IMF, World Bank, United Nations, etc. As we were saying, United Nations, World Bank, IMF, these were created after World War II, and thus वहां पे जो power structure है still is not democratized. It is still outdated. It is still anachronistic. So when discussions, one of the goals of G20 is to reform this financial architecture also. So decisions here have influenced the functioning of those bodies also. Then when the global governance in general is continuing to reflect the power equation at the end of World War II, the G20's recognition of changed realities and has given a place at the international high table to emerging powers or developing countries. The G20 is significant also because it gives equal say or opportunity for developing countries to have their viewpoint. So you would see that while we have a lot of developed countries, अगर आप global south में आते हो तो Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, India, Indonesia, these are major players, major developing players who are able to have influence, and thus because of this, through G20 also they are able to bring changes in bring reforms in IMF, bring reforms in World Bank, bring reforms at UN, and so on. So G20 is significant from this perspective. So every year G20 summit would be held in some of the other country. इस साल जो summit हुआ वो इंडिया में हुआ. Let's talk about that. What were the key outcomes? What is good about it? And then in details, some of the outcomes we would be covering in details. खा लो, निकाल के खा लो तुम. धीरे धीरे टॉफी का रैपर खोल रही है, वो बज रहा है एकदम, उसकी आवाज तब भी आ रही है, फिर भी ऐसे ही कर रही है. अरे खा लो भाई. हाँ हाँ डालो. हो गया. अच्छा. देखो अगर कुछ खाने की टॉफी वॉफी लानी होती ना तो वो वाली लाया करो, पेपर कवर वाली जो होती है. एक पार्ले किस्मी आता है छोटा सा, है ना, वो लेके आया करो, उससे कोई आवाज नहीं होती. मैंगो बाइट लेके आओगे, उसका प्लास्टिक कवर होगा, बचता रहेगा. राइट. और एक और खाना है आपको? मुझे देना है, मतलब और भी है? नहीं खाना, मुझे टेस्ट कर रहा था मैं. चलिए, तो समिट, G20 summit that was held in India. This summit's theme was Vasudev Kutumbakam, that is the entire world is a family, or the world is one family. So the idea or the main focus of G20 was also to ensure that this global community is able to come on the same page to solve various problems. And therefore, जो हम बोल रहे हैं ना कि सेम पेज पे आ पाए और वेरियस ग्लोबल प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर पाए, इसके चांसेस वर फाउंड टू बी negligible before the summit. And that's why while everyone was happy with the organization that India had done, everyone was happy about the various agendas that were put on for the meeting, no one was ready to believe that this G20 summit would be a success. Because for this to be success, we had to bring a lot of powers who are anti each other on the same platform. And G20 has been able to do that. So let us understand the key outcomes. G20 summit में क्या most important चीजें. And again, I'm not giving you each and everything that has happened here, because आप जब आंसर लिखोगे आप मैक्सिमम 4-5 पॉइंट्स लिख पाओगे. तो द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स that have happened at the G20 summit that we should always be, अभी से till next year आपका सितंबर में एग्जाम होगा, मेंस एग्जामिनेशन. If anyone asks you about G20 summit, you should be able to say, अच्छा ये 5 चीजें होंगी. That should be on your tips. If they ask it in preliminary examination, even then you should be comfortable. If they ask it in mains examination, you should not be like mains के टाइम पढ़ेंगे रिवाइज करेंगे, नहीं. It will be part of your test next week. हम नेक्स्ट वीक G20 पे क्वेश्चन देंगे. How you should be able to write a good answer on it. तो आउटकम क्या हुआ G20 का? तो पहला तो था न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन, which was a consensus declaration. Consensus declaration meaning all the countries, all the G20 countries have agreed to it, have supported it. What are the key things given in the New Delhi declaration? One, it's talking about Ukraine war, and here it says, so what happened? अभी इससे पहले ना G7 की मीट हुई थी. G7 की मीट में they had become very critical of Russia because they were representing one viewpoint. यहाँ पे if we were very very critical of Russia, Russia would have said कि we don't agree with this declaration. So on Ukraine war, the New Delhi declaration, एक और दूसरी चीज ना, कई बार इस तरह के सवाल आते हैं कि New Delhi declaration was in news recently. What is it about? It's about BRICS, it's about SCO, it's about G20 and so on. तो इस तरह से भी प्रीलिम्स में सवाल आते हैं. 2015 में प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जामिनेशन में सवाल आया था फोर्टालेजा डिक्लेरेशन के बारे में. फोर्टालेजा डिक्लेरेशन किससे एसोसिएटेड है, या फोर्टालेजा डिक्लेरेशन एट दैट टाइम वाज अबाउट ब्रिक्स की मीटिंग हुई थी, वहां पे डिक्लेरेशन हुआ था. तो या तो सवाल ये था कि फोर्टालेजा कहाँ पे लोकेटेड है, या सवाल ये था कि फोर्टालेजा डिक्लेरेशन किससे एसोसिएटेड. ऐसी न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन बहुत सारे होते हैं, बट recent New Delhi declaration is about G20 summit. One thing that it's talking about Ukraine war. It says that all states must act in a manner consistent with purposes and principles of UN Charter in its entirety. Rather than criticizing one side or the other side, it has said, the New Delhi declaration has said that all the member states should act in a manner which is as per UN Charter. Second, it says that they must refrain from threat or use of force to seek territorial acquisition. किसी दूसरे की टेरिटरी अक्वायर करने को अवॉइड करना है. On this they also say that the members must refrain from use or threat of use of nuclear weapons. तो जैसे पुतिन थ्रेटन करते रहते हैं कि हमारे पास न्यूक्लियर वेपन है, we may go the nuclear way, वो उस तरह की चीजें directly indirectly keep on happening. In New Delhi declaration, all these countries have agreed that they will refrain from use of or threat of use of nuclear weapons. Peaceful resolution of conflict and efforts to address crisis as well as diplomacy and dialogue are critical. This is one aspect they have agreed to, and today's era must not be of war. This is another key point in Delhi declaration about what? About the G20, about the Russia-Ukraine. So one important dimension that G20 summit has accepted, or New Delhi declaration as part of G20 summit has accepted, is that to resolve Russia-Ukraine war, every member country has to follow or accept the UN Charter. They have to agree that they'll not militarily going to acquire someone else's territory. They will not be using nuclear weapons or threatening to use nuclear weapons, and they'll agree that this is not an era of war and war is not the solution. आप बोलोगे सर war तो फिर भी रशिया कर ही रही है ना, even if they agreed. Yes, but at least on papers they have agreed that these are the principles that will be followed. Then on grain, food, energy security, you know that Russia-Ukraine war has also impacted food security of the world. यूक्रेन वाला रीजन ट्रेडिशनली यूज्ड टू हैव अ ग्रासलैंड. उस ग्रासलैंड को क्या बोलते थे? स्टेपीज, राइट? हमें पता है ग्रासलैंड्स आर वेरी वेरी फर्टाइल एंड प्रोडक्टिव. तो इट इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द लार्जेस्ट प्रोड्यूसर ऑफ व्हीट एंड एक्सपोर्टर. बट आफ्टर रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर ये व्हीट अवेलेबिलिटी हैम्पर हुआ। लास्ट ईयर इवेंचुअली एक ग्रेन एग्रीमेंट साइन हो गया था with the intervention of UN and Turkey, where it was decided that grain के जो ships होंगे those would be allowed free movement. But हाँ, black sea, but recently Russia has withdrawn from, and this has again caused a problem. इसीलिए अपन if you remember last year we were talking in past classes we were talking about how Ukraine is trying to use some other river route mechanism to go to some other countries and वहां से export their food grains and everything, right? So we were talking about economic and financial market. यहाँ पे what has New Delhi Declaration said? New Delhi Declaration has first talked about crypto assets. It has said that we need to develop a mechanism to regulate cryptocurrencies. And उसपे they have said कि finance ministers and bank governors will be meeting very soon again next month, and there they'll be discussing mechanisms to regulate cryptocurrencies. इसी पे they've also said that level playing field and fair competition would be promoted by preventing or reducing protectionism and market distorting practices. So recently what has happened, every country is moving towards protectionism. चाइना ने बहुत सारे restriction लगा रखे हैं, यूएस ने बहुत सारे restriction लगा रखे हैं. It is taking the world away from globalization. In fact, the biggest proponents of globalization, the US was one of the biggest proponent of globalization. EU was a proponent of globalization. But EU अभी अपना EU कुछ regulations लेके आ रहा है in the name of carbon and everything. What it is doing is it is indirectly preventing other countries from trading with it comfortably, easily, openly. The New Delhi Declaration has talked against it and has said that we have to discourage those practices and promote open, free economy, which is providing equal opportunities to everyone. On climate change also, they've said that there's a need to accelerate efforts to phase down unabated coal power. Coal power eventually use of coal power has to be phased down. Right now, its use has continued to increase. Then, for the first time, the declaration has noted that to fight climate change, अपन ने अभी climate change वाला topic नहीं पढ़ा है, पढ़ेंगे जल्दी पढ़ेंगे. To fight climate change, so when you will study climate change, you would understand some issues. पहले climate change क्या होता है ये पता है, ये सबको पता है. Global warming that is taking place because of which long-term pattern of climate is getting affected. Now this global warming that is happening, it is happening because of CO2 emission, and most of the CO2 emission has taken place because of developed countries. Developed countries have industrialized, and over the years they have kept on emitting a lot of CO2 which has gone into environment, is causing climate change. But अभी जो climate change का impact हो रहा है वो developing countries पे, underdeveloped countries पे भी हो रहा है, whereas developed countries are taking all its advantages. So it was agreed that developed countries would be providing financial resources to developing countries to fight climate change. पर financial resources कितना होना चाहिए? So as per Paris Agreement, it has to be $100 billion a year till 2025. But that $100 billion a year till 2025 has been found to be a very low amount. G20 for the first time has quantified what is the amount of money that would be needed by developing countries before 2030 to fight climate change. And they've said that the declaration noted, New Delhi Declaration has noted that $5.8 to $5.9 trillion in pre-2030 period is required by developing countries, in particular for their needs to implement their emission targets. For them to implement their emission targets effectively, to reach their emission targets effectively, इतना पैसा चाहिए. So for the first time, G20 has quantified this data. तो अभी हम बात कर रहे हैं कि न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन की. G20 समिट में न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन हुआ. उसमें first we spoke about Russia-Ukraine war, where it was agreed upon that the countries, the member states would be following UN Charter. They will not be using military for territorial acquisitions. They will not be using nuclear weapons or threatening to use nuclear weapons. This is not an era of war. Then food security and fertilizer security in सब की बात हुई, जहाँ Russia, Ukraine के food or they should take as steps to allow that to happen. Then we spoke about economic and financial market. उसमें though they have discussed lots of things, अगर हम वो सारी चीजें नोट्स में डाल देंगे तो फिर वो नोट्स नहीं रह जाएगा, वो पूरा डिक्लेरेशन बन जाएगा, उसका फायदा नहीं है. तो about economies and financial market, they have said कि there's a need of properly regulating cryptocurrencies, and they've also said that protectionism, which is hampering globalization and which is not giving equal opportunities for developing countries to grow, has to be avoided. At the level of climate change, they've talked about phasing down of coal power and have said that developing countries would be requiring around $6 trillion in pre-2030 period to fight climate change. On global debt vulnerability, we know various countries are facing debt crisis. On global debt vulnerability, they have committed to promoting resilient growth by urgently and effectively addressing debt vulnerabilities. Health पे उन्होंने बोला है कि we'll need to strengthen global health architecture. Terrorism पे they have said कि all kinds of terrorism, whether it emanates from xenophobia, racism, and other forms of intolerance, or in the name of religion, have to be criticized, have to be condemned, have to be taken action against. And they have agreed that all religions are committed to this. The New Delhi Declaration has some of these key components. Now, इस पे एग्रीमेंट करना ना बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज. न्यू दिल्ली डिक्लेरेशन को एक कंसेंसस डॉक्यूमेंट बनाना was a big challenge, in which we have been successful, primarily because यहाँ पे टेररिज्म की भी बातें हैं, यहाँ पे climate change वाले related aspect, like India is a country which is not very happy with a lot of focus on phase down of coal. Why only phase down of coal? Why not phase down of petroleum products, gases? India has a lot of coal. They have a lot of gas. So बोलते नहीं coal ही ज़्यादा problematic. But still, India has compromised on various fronts. Other countries have compromised on various fronts. Some neutral language has been used. Unlike G7 का declaration जहाँ पे Russia was criticized, यहाँ पे Russia का direct criticism ना करके neutral language has been used to deal with the war situation in Russia-Ukraine वाला aspect. Other than this, so this is New Delhi Declaration, the key points in the New Delhi Declaration, which was part of the G20 Summit. Other than this, you would see that G20 has also decided to include the 55-nation African Union, the second regional bloc to join the G20 after EU. EU is one of the G20 members. Ab G21 mein, we also have African Union. Now, this is expected to take India's Global South initiative forward. Now, what is this Global South initiative? Or what is this Global South initiative, या फिर what is Global South? आप अगर नोटिस करोगे carefully, तो most of the developed countries, industrialized countries, are in the northern hemisphere. आप US चले जाओ, कनाडा चले जाओ, यूरोप में आ जाओ. पहले आप रशिया को भी देखते थे, it was a powerful country. It was in the, आप साउथ अमेरिका में आइए, you will find developing countries. आप अफ्रीका में आइए, you will find developing countries. आप एशिया में, साउथ एशिया में आइए, not the northern one, साउथ एशिया में, रशिया को छोड़ दो, you have developing countries. Developing countries, but they're also very highly populated. Their influence, economic influence is increasing, and thus their say in various global initiatives or various global issues should be higher. But it has remained very low because of a lot of influence by Europeans and US and other such big economies. So, Global South refers to these countries and their interest. What India has been calling for is, we need to stand united to increase our influence, to have our say more. For example, in G20 also, we need more say of Global South. And जो African Union का inclusion हुआ G20 में, will it increase the say of Global South in at this forum? Yes. African Union, all developing countries. Now, please note, हम Global South को ना सिर्फ ऐसे नहीं डिवाइड करते हैं कि इक्वेटर के नीचे हो गया तो Global South का पार्ट हो गया. अब देखो अफ्रीका में तो इक्वेटर के ऊपर वाली कंट्रीज भी है, इंडिया खुद इक्वेटर के ऊपर वाली कंट्री है ना। तो ग्लोबल साउथ को आप इक्वेटर से मत कनेक्ट करना, इन जनरल नॉर्दर्न कंट्रीज जो more industrialized, more well off, and the other countries which are developing but their influence is increasing. Okay, now coming back to what were we talking about? So with the addition of African Union in G20, the future summit in Brazil and South Africa is expected to take India's Global South initiative forward. How? Because more say would be there from that side. Now, it is expected that this move will tilt the balance within G20 away from Power 11. Power 11 are these countries, G7 wali countries, Australia, EU, and Russia and China combined together. These are the powerful G20 countries. So now, with addition of African Union, the balance will tilt from this Power 11 to developing 10. Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, African Union, South Africa, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, India, South Korea, Indonesia. These countries would be able to have more influence because of inclusion of African Union here. Because European Union was representing a huge bloc. Now African Union would be representing a bigger bloc. So that's why we are saying that inclusion of African Union gives more priority to Global South, their interest, and this is another achievement of G20. So G20 Summit में हम की highlights की बात कर रहे हैं. पहला we spoke about the New Delhi Declaration. दूसरा inclusion of African Union and thus more say to Global South. Then in the finance track, we have not only talked about regulating cryptocurrencies, they're also talking about strengthening multi-developmental multilateral development banks. Multilateral जैसे World Bank है, Asian Development Bank है. Now World Bank right now has a capital limit. How much different countries are contributing? अगर उसके उनके पास capital limit है, तो capital limit होने के बाद they will not be able to, as India's requirement is increasing, India would need more money, more loans from World Bank. But if World Bank has capital limit, it would not be able to serve developing countries need that much. So what is needed is we need to, one, वहां पे decision making को change करना पड़ेगा so that more say of emerging economies could be there. Two, their capital has to increase so that more funds for developing purposes may come to developing countries. So here they have also on the finance track था जो इसका जिसमें finance ministers मिले थे summit में, G20 summit में who meet the head of the government. Finance track में जहां finance minister मिले थे, they have also talked about strengthening multilateral development bank, lending capacity, and replicating the use of digital public infrastructure. जो India has started using digital public infrastructure and we have started seeing its positive influence. तो global economy में भी इसका use has to be increased. So these are the three things, three important things. One, crypto का regulation. Two, strengthening the lending capacity of multilateral developing banks, and then three, digital public infrastructure को strengthen करना and उसके use को promote करना throughout the world. These are the three broad areas जो finance track में G20 में discuss हुआ. Then there were some other key outcomes at G20. तीन broad चीजें अपन ने अभी तक देखी है. One, New Delhi Declaration. Two, what was the second point? Joining of African Union and thus strengthening of the say of Global South at G20. Three, finance track पे regulation of cryptocurrency, strengthening of multilateral development banks, and digital financial infrastructure, उस पे focus. Fourth, announcement of India Middle East Europe economic corridor. अभी हम इसे डिटेल में डिस्कस करेंगे. This economic corridor is through ship routes and train routes is connecting India with West Asia and वहां से फिर यूरोप. स्विस कनाल का रोल थोड़ा सा कम हो जाएगा बिकॉज ये वेस्ट एशिया को लैंड के थ्रू पास कर रहा है थ्रू ट्रेन नेटवर्क. तो थ्रू दिस व्हाट वी वांट इज नॉट ओनली टू इंक्रीज इंडियाज इकोनॉमिक कनेक्टिविटी विथ वेस्ट एशिया एंड यूरोप एंड नॉट ओनली इंडिया, पूरा एरिया प्रॉपरली इकोनॉमिकली इंटीग्रेट हो. Not one aspect is that, but other important thing is we through this initiative, which is also supported by US, European Union, etc., would be countering China's Belt and Road Initiative. China, through their Belt and Road Initiative, has invested a lot of infrastructure and is having a lot of influence and has ensured more connectivity, more market for China's product. Through this initiative, will be countering that as well. And because मिडिल ईस्ट को अगर आप इनफैक्ट लेट्स कवर दिस टॉपिक फर्स्ट। इंडिया मिडिल ईस्ट यूरोप इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर, उसमें आप देखोगे दिस इज द रूट दैट वी प्लान टू डेवलप। ये शिप रूट होगा, इट विल गो टू यूएई, यूएई से यूएस, जॉर्डन, इजराइल, एंड देन कनेक्टिंग टू यूरोप। यू वुड सी स्विस कैनाल, जो रेड सी से आप स्विस कैनाल, वी हैव स्टडीड रेड सी इन द प्रीवियस क्लासेस। यहाँ पे स्विस कैनाल होता है, यहाँ पे उसका डिपेंडेंसी भी जा रहा है। तो थ्री थिंग्स दैट इज हैपनिंग इज, वन, economic integration is increasing. Two, we are able to counter the China's Belt and Road Initiative. And three, dependency on Suez Canal reduces. These are the three key important significance of this economic corridor. India, Middle East, Europe. IMEE economic corridor. EC. IMEE EC. तो इसके बारे में you would see that it was announced by PM Modi at G20 Summit in 2023. It entails an ambitious project that could leverage railway track and shipping corridor. Railway track कहाँ पे? Middle East में, and shipping corridor India से वहाँ और फिर Middle East से आगे. It would have two components: East corridor connecting India to West Asia, and Northern corridor connect West Asia, Middle East to Europe. So West Asia, Middle East to Europe would be connected by this northern corridor. तो उसका significance क्या है? तीन significance अपन ने समझे. This is also this was not announced as part of New Delhi Declaration because it was not a common agenda of G20 countries. This at the time of G20 summits, on the sidelines of G20 summit, this project has also been announced. ऐसे ही एक और initiative that has been announced is Global Biofuel Alliance. Have we studied biofuel? अभी biofuel नहीं पढ़ा क्या? बाईपास नहीं करना. देखो क्या है ना कि स्विस कनाल में वन कंट्री में हैव मोर इन्फ्लुएंस, टुमारो उनका दिमाग सटकता है, वो ब्लॉक कर देते हैं आपका ट्रांसपोर्टेशन. हाँ, सऊदी भी कर सकता है, और भी लोग कर सकते हैं, है ना. तो वाई डिपेंड ओनली ऑन दैट पर्टिकुलर रूट. ऐसे समझो कल किसी ने इन सारी कंट्रीज के अलावा किसी ने आके बम गिरा दिया वहां पे, सब टूट फूट गया, right? In that case, a lot of hindrances would occur. So rather than depending on only one route, there should be alternate routes also available, even if that route is controlled by our friends. Why only depend on that? हाँ, cheaper है, फिर भी alternate देख सकते हैं. वही मैं समझा रहा हूँ ना कि अपने दोस्त भी हों, टेक्निकल चीजें हो सकती हैं, कोई बम गिरा सकता है, कुछ भी हो सकता है. तो स्ट्रेटेजिक टाइम्स पे यू नीड डिफरेंट ऑप्शंस. मोर ओवर फॉर अस व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट कि देखो यहां से अपन मिडिल ईस्ट कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं, दैट कुड हैव हैपेंड थ्रू पाकिस्तान, अफगानिस्तान एक्सेट्रा, बट वी नो आवर टेंशंस विद पाकिस्तान क्रिएट इट्स ओन प्रॉब्लम. तो वी नीड ऑल्टरनेटिव रूट्स टू वेस्ट एशिया, एंड वेस्ट एशिया हम सेंट्रल एशिया में भी एंटर कर रहे हैं, एंड देन वी विल नॉट बी क्रिएटिंग न्यू इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. वहां पे ऑलरेडी ट्रेन रूट्स हैं, right? They would just be integrated properly for this long distance goods transportation. Okay, let's come back to Global Biofuel Alliance. So जैसे अपन ने in 2015 at the time of Paris Agreement, India had announced creation of International Solar Alliance. Purpose of International Solar Alliance was to increase the coverage of solar energy by mobilizing more resources. ऐसे ही on the same lines, India has announced setting up of Global Biofuel Alliance. Biofuel, do we understand what biofuels are? देखो, there are some fuels which you get through geological process. For millions of years, कुछ डायनासोर्स थे, वो दब गए, मर गए, सेडिमेंट्स बन गए. Over the years, after a lot of temperature pressure, they have converted into oil, crude oil. वही पेट्रोल और डीजल के फॉर्म में आपकी गाड़ियों को चला रहे हैं. अरे हंस रहे हो, मतलब सीरियसली वैसा ही हो रहा है. Those are living organisms of that kind who eventually got sedimented and have become जो vegetation है, it has become coal and everything, and जो animal life form है, it has converted into petroleum products. But fossil fuels are limited. Why? To create them, millions of years are needed. Biofuels are fuels which come from contemporary biological process. जैसे गन्ना उगाया, उसका जूस निकाला, उसे फर्मेंट किया, एल्कोहल बनाया. एल्कोहल is one of the biofuels. Ethanol. We can add ethanol into petrol. It is called ethanol blended petrol, and today all the petrol that you buy has ethanol in it. हमारा टारगेट है कि हम 20% ethanol पे पहुंच जाए by 2025. Right now, all of us in our cars or in our scooters, bikes, जहां पे भी आप पेट्रोल यूज कर रहे हो, you may be using ethanol. So that's a biofuel. There are lots of advantages of biofuel. Though it will still emit CO2. Biofuel will still emit CO2. जब उसे बर्न करोगे, पर प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड दिस कि आप कोल जो बर्न कर रहे हो वो भी CO2 एमिट कर रहा है, कोल बर्न कर रहे हो वो भी CO2 एमिट कर रहा है, एंड बायोफ्यूल ये बर्न कर रहे हो वो भी CO2 एमिट कर रहा है. देन व्हाट इज द एडवांटेज हियर? एक तो अदर पोल्यूटेंट्स व्हिच आर एमिटेड बाय कोल वुड बी मच लेसर, बट थिंक एट अ बिगर लेवल, थोड़ा सा बड़े लेवल पे सोचो. आपने जब गन्ना उगाया था तो उस गन्ने ने बहुत सारा CO2 अब्सॉर्ब किया था ना, उससे वो बना है, अब वो रिलीज हो रहा है. तो नेट रिलीज एज सच इज नॉट दैट वेरी हाई. Whereas when you are extracting coal from the coal mines, वो कोल तो वहां दब के पड़े हुए थे millions of years पहले से. You are adding more CO2 into the atmosphere. Are we understanding this? तो बायोफ्यूल का एक एडवांटेज ये है, it is cleaner, its impact on climate change would be much lesser, but more importantly for India, देखो India doesn't have a lot of reserves for oil and natural gas, and for this it depends on import. अब देखो अगर हमने suppose we have reached the target of 10% of ethanol blending in our petrol. All petrol that is sold in India is blended by ethanol by 10%. इसका मतलब क्या है? हम 10% कम पेट्रोल यूज कर रहे हैं, 10% कम इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. In future, when we want to make this target go to 20%, what would that mean? We'll be importing 20% less petrol than what we would have imported. So we are also reducing our import dependency. When we are reducing our import dependency, we are also saving our forex reserves. When we are saving our forex reserves, we are also strengthening our foreign currency. We are also creating more jobs in the country. Right? Biofuel plants बनेंगे, सारी चीजें होंगी. So biofuels are very significant from this perspective, and therefore we have targeted increase in the biofuel coverage. We'll cover the topic of biofuel thoroughly in coming classes. अभी वो कहाँ है अपना हीरो? भदौरिया जी, ये है ना, जैसे आपके पीछे आपका नाम भदौरिया जी है ना, शैलेंद्र भदौरिया. अब आपकी क्लास डिस्टर्ब फिर से होगी, मैं कहीं छुट्टी पे जा रहा हूँ. But before I go there, I'll take 2 extra classes where I'll cover energy sector thoroughly. आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में सब हो गया था, रेलवेज और एनर्जी बाकी है ना. इफ यू रिमेंबर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर मैंने कंप्लीट कर दिया था. तो I'll take 2 extra classes where I'll cover रेलवेज एंड एनर्जी सेक्टर पूरा, और फिर मैं सैटरडे संडे में कहीं दूर चला जाऊंगा. तुम्हें क्या बताऊं, अभी एक्सप्लोर कर रहे हैं. बट इस बार जो मेरे पार्टनर्स हैं, निखिल सर, करण सर, इस बार आपको रुकने देना ही नहीं. इट्स बिन 4-5 years जब से मैंने वेकेशंस नहीं लिए. आई टेक ओनली 2 वेकेशंस इन द एंटायर ईयर, एक होली वाले दिन, एक दिवाली वाले दिन. तो इस बार अब मैं जा रहा हूँ. मींस जैसे ही खत्म हो रहा है, आई एम रनिंग अवे. तो देयर यू विल अगेन हैव टू, आई विल टेक 2 क्लासेस, एक्स्ट्रा क्लासेस पहले ही, बिफोर आई गिव यू ऑफ ऑन सैटरडे संडे. फाउंडेशन में तो बेटा मंडे, जैसे मैं ना ऐसे आपको पढ़ा दूंगा, फ्राइडे सैटरडे संडे भी मैं पढ़ा दूंगा, मंडे ट्यूसडे वेंसडे भी मैं पढ़ा दूंगा. फिर मैं थर्सडे को ब्रेक क्यों मिलेगा? तो पढ़ा के जाऊंगा ना. और फाउंडेशन में तो बहुत सारे ज्योग्राफी वाले मैम एक्स्ट्रा क्लास ले लेंगे. फाउंडेशन में टेंशन नहीं है. या फिर मैं यश सर को बोलूंगा क्लास लेने के, ये लेंगे आपकी क्लास, है ना. कब तक खाली आपके पेपर इवेलुएट करेंगे, क्लास भी लेंगे आपकी. मैं जाऊंगा छुट्टी पे, सर लेंगे क्लास. ओके, so coming back to biofuels, we were talking about biofuels, so we'll study biofuels in detail. But are you understanding the advantages of biofuels? Why do we need to promote biofuels? नाउ बायोफ्यूल्स को भी ना आप अलग अलग कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड कर सकते हो. देयर आर फर्स्ट जनरेशन बायोफ्यूल्स. फर्स्ट जनरेशन बायोफ्यूल्स आर डेवलप्ड फ्रॉम फूड ग्रेन्स. जैसे शुगर केन से जो आपने इथेनॉल बनाया या फिर मेज से इथेनॉल बनाया, दीज आर फर्स्ट जनरेशन बायोफ्यूल्स. सेकेंड जनरेशन बायोफ्यूल्स कम फ्रॉम लिग्नोसेल्यूलोसिक प्रोडक्ट्स. जो फूड ग्रेन्स नहीं है उनसे आपने बायोफ्यूल बनाया, आपने स्टबल लेके बायोफ्यूल बनाया. थर्ड जनरेशन बायोफ्यूल्स यूज बायोटेक्नोलॉजी. बायोटेक्नोलॉजी मतलब सपोज विद द हेल्प ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी यू आर कन्वर्टिंग एल्गी, एल्गी का आपने बायोमास बढ़ा दिया, तो दैट इज थर्ड जनरेशन बायो. तो ऐसे देयर आर डिफरेंट जनरेशन ऑफ बायोफ्यूल्स. तो दिस Global Biofuel Alliance has been launched to promote coordination among global economies to produce more biofuel, to increase supply and demand of biofuels, and to ensure that globally 20% biofuels use होने लगे. 20 ethanol blending with petrol globally to reach 20%. ये target लेके this Global Biofuel Alliance has been created. This alliance initially has these initiating members: USA, Brazil, Argentina, Italy, South Africa, Mauritius, UAE, India, and Bangladesh. This alliance has also requested urged other G20 countries to join. There are some observer countries who have not fully joined it but are observers. Who they are Singapore and Canada. And with this, there is focus on fighting pollution, focus on reducing dependency on extraction of fossil fuels. तो G20 समिट के साइडलाइंस पे ये ग्लोबल बायोफ्यूल अलायंस. तो दो इंपॉर्टेंट इनिशिएटिव्स लॉन्च हुए हैं G20 पे. एक है इंडिया मिडिल ईस्ट यूरोप इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर, IMEE इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर, which is a connectivity project which is focused on economic integration, countering Belt and Road Initiative, and reducing dependency on Suez Canal. And then a Global Biofuel Alliance which is focused on increasing cooperation so that demand and supply of biofuels can increase, and eventual global ethanol blending of petrol can reach 20%. This alliance has urged other members of G20 to also join. So these were the outcomes of the G20 summit, major outcomes of the G20 summits. Let's go back. We were talking about G20 summits के major outcomes में. तो first we spoke about New Delhi Declaration, then we spoke about African Union का inclusion, उसका significance, finance track पे regulation of cryptocurrency, setting up strengthening of multilateral development banks, and replicating the use of digital public infrastructure throughout the world, announcement of IMEEC, and launch of Global Biofuel Alliance. Suppose you are asked a question in the examination, discuss the key highlights of G20 summit. इससे ज्यादा आप लिख पाओगे क्या? आपको 150 या 250 वर्ड्स लिखने हैं. You won't be able to write more than this. This is New Delhi Declaration के अंदर ही you have more than 150 words. Under New Delhi Declaration, we have discussed various dimensions also. These are the key outcomes, key highlights. Sir, even during vacations, नहीं बेटा, मेरा ऑफिस से ऑफ रहता है तब मैं पढ़ता हूँ. मतलब 3 दिन ऑफिस बंद है तो मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ, और वेकेशन पे जाऊंगा तो थोड़ी पढ़ूंगा. वेकेशन पे मैं गया ही नहीं हूँ. मतलब इट्स बिन माय लास्ट वेकेशन वाज इन 2016 व्हेन आई वाज अ स्टूडेंट. मैं मेंस देने के बाद ट्रिप पे गया था. 2017 से मैं पढ़ाने लगा हूँ, एंड तब से आई हैवंट बीन ऑन अ वेकेशन. तो अब मैं जाने वाला हूँ, नाराज मत होना. 2 दिन नहीं जा रहा बेटा, 7 दिन जा रहा हूँ. 2 सैटरडे संडे तो बीच में आ रहा है ना, तो आपका क्लास सैटरडे संडे फिक्स हो. वैसे नहीं जा रहा, 2 दिन नहीं है. ईगो नहीं, ईगो नहीं, ईगो नहीं. ईगो बस क्लास में, क्लास के एंटरटेनमेंट के लिए. करंट अफेयर स्टूडेंट्स वोंट अंडरस्टैंड इट, इग्नोर ये जीएस वाले बच्चों का जो. इंडिया, जर्मनी, यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, ईगो का फुल फॉर्म ये. आ जाइए. लेट्स कम बैक टू एनालिसिस. हमने भी आउटकम देखा. आउटकम इज व्हाट? New Delhi Declaration or associated चीजें. Then other aspects. We've looked at outcome of G20 Summit. Now you would read lots of articles about G20 Summit. सब ना नोट करके याद करके नहीं रखना है, क्योंकि एग्जाम में हम कितना लिख पाएंगे. एग्जाम में तो 5-6 पॉइंट्स ही लिखोगे, चाहे कुछ भी पूछे, कैसे भी पूछे. There are 5-6 points only you will be able to write. ये 5-6 points हमें समझ में आने चाहिए. Now let's talk about significance. Significance of the summit. तो पहला है, पहले we are talking about this कि no one was expecting any success here for a number of reasons. International order is in a flux. There's a lot of global tensions going on. Geopolitical contestation has sharpened weaknesses of existing multilateral institutions. WTO is supposed to promote globalization, but WTO बहुत weak हो गया, उसी कोई सुन ही नहीं रहा है. People are moving towards protectionism, and global economy is also facing headwinds. There are inflations all over the world. Generally recession की तरफ world जा रहा था. So in this scenario, in this difficult scenario, no one was expecting any success, but by forging a consensus between the G20 nation on New Delhi Declaration, India has shown its diplomatic ability, its growing clout, and its cordial relation on both sides of the divide. First significance of the summit was this. Now again, you won't be able to write all this. आप जब significance लिख रहे होगे, significance of the G20 summit, you will perhaps be able to write one line. By achieving consensus in this tumultuous time, India has shown its diplomatic ability, growing clout, and cordial relation on both sides of the divide. आप तो अपने आंसर में बस ऐसे ही समझा पाओगे in a very concise manner. This is the first key aspect in the significance. Then we have made G20 more inclusive. देखो, till now G20 used to be a summit of technocrats and policy wonks. We have made it a people's festival. In this summit there were 200 plus meetings in 60 plus cities, and it was not only bureaucrats who were participating or diplomats who were participating. There was a lot of participation from various NGOs, various other organizations, and people. All their viewpoints were understood. In fact, interest of Global South has also been given much higher priority here. You would see, before G20 Summit, as part of its preparation, India had organized a Voice of Global South Summit with participation from 125 countries. 125 countries, mostly from Global South, to understand their viewpoint, and then the inclusion of African Union will also strengthen Global South's situation. Then IMEEC, उसका significance हमें समझ में आ रहा है कि it has potential to be effective counter against and though comparatively limited in scope to the ambitious Belt and Road Initiative of China. GBA was also an important step towards more research and delivery towards alternative energy sources, and Summit has also focused on technological transformation and digital public infrastructure, thus providing India an opportunity to showcase its considerable accomplishment in these areas. तो all अच्छी चीजें. G20 Summit इतना अच्छा हुआ है, हम इसकी लिमिटेशंस वगैरह नहीं डिस्कस कर रहे. एक दो लिमिटेशंस हैं, जैसे नॉन पार्टिसिपेशन ऑफ चाइना एंड रशिया, बट नॉट नहीं, रशिया एंड चाइना पार्टिसिपेट किया, नॉन पार्टिसिपेशन ऑफ देयर हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट्स, देयर प्रेसिडेंट्स. So when Xi Jinping, it was announced that Xi Jinping is not coming, again everyone had become very doubtful कि अब तो शायद coming up with a declaration on which everyone would agree, उसके chances बहुत कम हो गए. जैसे पुतिन नहीं आ पाए तो समझ में आता है because Putin's country is going through a war. But when Xi Jinping decided to not come, it was believed that China will not want this thing to be a success, this summit to be a success. But even China को भी on board लेके आ पाना, तो it is said that एक आर्टिकल में लिखा हुआ था कि ये दोनों लोग नहीं आए ना, शायद इस वजह से कंसेंसस रीच कर पाना ज्यादा आसान है. तो इसीलिए मैंने वो पहले मैं लिमिटेशंस में लिख रहा था कि नॉन पार्टिसिपेशन ऑफ दीज टू हेड ऑफ द स्टेट्स. अब P5 कंट्रीज के 2 मेंबर्स पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहे हैं, प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, बट देन मैंने उसे लिमिटेशन हटा दिया. तो एज सच दिस G20 समिट वाज सच अ बिग अफेयर, हम इसके क्रिटिसिज्म लिमिटेशन में भी जा ही नहीं. ओवर द इयर्स, ओवर द नेक्स्ट 1 ईयर बहुत सारी चीजें अनाउंस हुई हैं, उनका इंप्लीमेंटेशन में नहीं हुई, मोस्ट ऑफ द चीजें इंप्लीमेंट नहीं होंगी. तो बाय द टाइम ऑफ योर एग्जामिनेशन वी वुड से G20 समिट में बहुत सारे अच्छी चीजें हुई थी, बट उनका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन बहुत, तो हमारे लिमिटेशंस में वो चीजें आएंगी, और वे फॉरवर्ड में विल टॉक अबाउट हाउ टू इम्प्रूव दैट। तो अभी के लिए लाइक we do not have a way forward, we do not have limitation, we'll keep adding limitations and way forward by the time we reach at your mains examination. तो हम बहुत positively conclude कर रहे हैं. There are two quotes I have given in conclusion, one by Harsh V. Pant. He says, with its deft leadership, New Delhi has managed to put its own distinct imprimatur or imprint on the G20, making it a much more dynamic platform. And in the process, India has managed to elevate its own credibility in the global order. G20, which was becoming a weaker and weaker body, usko humne bahut zyada strength diya hai. In the process, we have also improved our global credibility. Ek Modi ji ka quote hai. He had written an article in Indian Express. Usme se I've taken this. As the G20 president, we had pledged to make the global table larger. Larger matlab more inclusive, more people would be able to participate, ensuring every voice is heard and every country contributes. I'm positive that we have matched our pledge with action and outcomes. जो हमने pledge लिया था of making the G20 table much larger, we have acted on it and we have matched our pledge with actions and outcomes. So this is another way in which you can conclude. Now, for people who have PSIR background, you use these quotes a lot. आप हर्षवी पंत को कोट करते हो बार बार, आप सुहासिनी हैदर को कोट करते हो बार बार, और आप पीएम मोदी को भी कोट कर सकते हैं. जनरल स्टडीज वालों को कोट याद रखने, किसका कोट है याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं है, बस कंक्लूजन नॉर्मली लिख सकते हो आप. दैट इज गुड. PSIR ऑप्शनल वाले विल यूज दीज थिंकर्स नेम एंड एवरीथिंग, नॉट फॉर GSP. ओके, G20 में हमें इतना ही समझना है. अब नाउ ओवर द लास्ट 1 year, जब से इंडिया के पास प्रेसिडेंटशिप आई थी, देयर वर लॉट्स ऑफ आर्टिकल्स ऑन G, लॉट्स ऑफ, लाइक हर महीने G20 का कोई तो कुछ सेशन चल रहा था, एंड देयर वाज समथिंग कमिंग अप. वी डू नॉट नीड ऑल दोज थिंग्स. प्लीज रिमेंबर, हमें 150 वर्ड्स और 250 वर्ड्स ही लिखने हैं, एंड वी ऑलरेडी हैव मोर देन दैट, much more than that with us, right? Yeah. ट्रोइका का सिग्निफिकेंस, हाँ, ये देखो, ये सारी ना क्या है, ग्लोबल साउथ वाली कंट्रीज हैं. तो who decides global agenda for that G20 summit? The country which जहाँ पे जो प्रेसिडेंट होगी. तो अभी for the next few years the presidency is to be held by India, Brazil, South Africa. उससे पहले लास्ट ईयर किसके पास थी? आई थिंक इंडोनेशिया के पास. तो ऑल दीज ग्लोबल साउथ डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज आर गोइंग टू होल्ड इट. तो जो ग्लोबल साउथ को हमने प्रायोरिटी दिया है, दिस प्रायोरिटी इज गोइंग टू strengthen, is going to continue, remain a priority for the next few years. And in this period, the global south should be able to increase its influence on the global scenario. Okay. G20 is understood. Key outcomes, key initiatives. Prelims में ये alliance वगैरह के बारे में questions आ सकते हैं, वो सारी चीजें आ सकती हैं. All of you should be very well prepared for that. In test मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, अगले वीक टेस्ट में मैं अपनी टीम को जानता हूँ, वो पूछेंगे आपसे G20 की इनमें से कौन सी G20 की कंट्री है, कौन सी नहीं, बिकॉज दे गो थ्रू पास्ट ईयर क्वेश्चंस. अच्छा, ऐसे सवाल पूछा है यूपीएससी ने, हम भी ऐसा ही पूछेंगे. They'll make it slightly difficult. कैसे? They'll make it difficult by doing this only one pair, only two pair. यूपीएससी ने सिंपल वाला पूछा था 2019-20 में, इनमें से कौन सा है, वन ओनली, टू ओनली. ना वो पेयर वाली चीजें वो और डिफिकल्ट हो गई है ना. Only one of the following is correct, only two of the following is correct. Are we understanding this? Do we have clarity? G20 is understood. Can we start with the beginning of G20 and what has happened till this summit? Will we be able to talk about G20, G20 significance, what happened in the summit significance, a conclusion for this? Will we be comfortably able to answer that? Okay.